I have an important interview for an internship tomorrow. Do you have any advice for me? Not that won't distract me from the game. Please go into detail. Please go into detail. Please go into detail. Here's a mistake that people do. Here's a mistake that people do when they're talking about something. Is there's a lot of layers of depth to something that if you have experience in it, you sort of have a higher level summary. So for instance, let's say we're talking about StarCraft. There is something that is like a general high-level understanding, like I played Standard. And if you know how StarCraft works, you know what Standard means. You know what Standard means, right? You know this. Oh yeah, so I held off his all-in, and since, you know, I knew he was behind, I just played Standard from there as Terran, and then I won. That's the sort of thing that's bad.
What to do?
A lot of people don't recognize that that's a bad explanation for the purposes of an interview. Because they're like, but that's what that is. The other person who I'm talking to should know that. In a conversational sense, yes, but in an interview, that's bad. That's bad. You need to not just have this high-level statement, you need to demonstrate some understanding. So for instance, bad would be, yeah, the Zerg did like an early one base attack with some Lings and Banelings, but, you know, I just held it off with some Reaper Micro.
Time runs out on me.
And then I just played it out standard from there and won because I had an economic lead. So you can still use some of those jargon. You can say, so I opened up with, or my opponent opened up with some one base aggression, I'd open up one base Reaper. I didn't really have any specific tools that would be good against this, except for micro, so I have my supply depots positioned in this way to allow me to bounce up and down high ground, and really give me a good opportunity. And then you say something like, and upon doing this is able to hold off the attack. So at this point, I know my opponent probably has like 12 drones. I already have plenty of SCVs, but because I don't really have a good attacking force, I just elected to defend, expand, build a whole bunch of barracks, and accumulate, you know, the same sort of big army that I would make in my normal game, which is already good, but it's going to be especially good because he was so low on drones. It doesn't take that many extra words to go deep and to demonstrate the layers of understanding underneath that. You just need to go a little into details. So yeah, I think that's the big thing, is like going deep. Like, so let's say that you were supposed to be a QA engineer. Here's a really simple example. Like, you were going to do QA engineering, and in the interview, someone says, suppose I say that I've built this calculator and I want you to test it. How would you test it? Bad answer. Well, I would test, you know, the basic functionality, like, I would test basic things, you know, like multiplication, addition, subtraction. I would then try to test, and then so on and so forth. You've already fucked up, right? You want to go into some depth, right? I would test to see if the basic functions like addition, subtraction, multiplication, division work properly. I would do basic things like multiply two simple integers together. I would have, you know, two numbers, one with a decimal, one without, with both decimal. I would try to see what happens if I add things to 0. I would try to see what happens if I divide by 0. See, you're starting to get some depth about how you would test the functions. You don't have to say every damn thing, but saying some stuff is really, 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 really good. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? See what I mean? The depth thing. Because, you know, to explain why this is such a good idea, an interview is them trying to figure out quickly, in only several hours of interview process, whether you are going to be qualified to do hundreds of hours of quality work. They're trying to do a small amount of hours to see if you will be good for hundreds of hours of quality work. So you want to try to explain to them and to help them understand why you're so good. They shouldn't have to figure it out. So going back to the StarCraft example, he said, yeah, so I pretty much played Standard from there. I, the interviewer, don't know if you actually know what Standard is. I can't exactly be sure of that. What are my thoughts regarding unpaid internships? Chat seems to be quite divided. I think I too am divided on the issue, because there's like a really positive side, there's like a really negative side. So I don't know. I really don't know. Because here's the really positive side of things, okay?
I'll never tell.
So I'm gonna make a true statement. I'm gonna make a true statement, alright? What I'm about to tell you is a true statement. Grades and GPA, I don't give a shit what your grades are, right? Like, I couldn't care less. Like, if you were applying to like a job at artillery and I was reading the resume, I probably am not going to give huge credence to the grades. You know what I mean? Like, a whole bunch of coursework. I mean, by the way, these aren't bad, right? It's not like, I got good grades, I'm unable to be hired. Like, that is not true. Okay, so for clarity. But, if we stop and think about it, like, there are, like, millions of people
Reporting for duty.
who have been able to get good grades and have taken good classes. There are millions of people who have these things. So, what's really useful? What's a really useful thing? Like, again, let's just stop. Let's stop. Let's think about what the hiring process is. The hiring process is a bad proxy. It is a bad proxy. Hey. It's a bad proxy for determining... Dude, we got so much value. It's a bad proxy for determining whether someone will actually be good at a particular job. Okay. I was talking about this earlier. What's an interview? An interview is a not good proxy. It's spending like tens of hours, or excuse me, like singles of hours, maybe like an 8-hour interview process, which sounds long. It's only a few hours to determine if someone will be able to do hundreds, maybe even thousands of hours of good work. Okay, so we were talking about explanations in interviews. So, okay, what's an interview? An interview is a bad proxy for if someone can do your job, right? Or not your job, but do a job really well, right? So, for instance, I need a back-end engineer for my startup, and there's this person who's applying, and I'm going to talk to them for, again, something like 8 hours, 10 hours over the course of some amount of time, maybe a few weeks. Goodbye, baby cat. And I am going to hope that this gives me enough information to trust this person with the most important pieces of my startup. Oof. They're going to work probably for well over 1,000 hours. Oof. So, what are you constantly trying to do in an interview? You're trying to get useful information. You're trying to get some first-class information that will help you decide whether or not this is a good person to hire. So, so when I say GPAs and coursework is not really that important to me as someone who reads resumes, it's because it's not as useful at helping me answer that question of, could you spend well over 1,000 hours doing a good job creating this back-end piece of architecture that I need for my startup? And that's why there's a few things that are very important. First of all, doing projects and things that show in more of a first-class way that you have that skill. Something like if you took it upon yourself to create some data analysis application on your phone for student records on your university in some way, just as a project to work on, that you could then talk about. And I can hear you talk about what you found difficult. I can hear you talk about things like certain problems that you encountered and how you solved them. I can hear your interest and your passion in that. So that winds up being really, really, really useful compared to something like so-and-so has a 3.9 in their university major. Like, it's not bad. It's not like, oh, he has a good grade. Well, gee, clearly he sucks. But rather, is that I just don't know what to do with that. I don't know what that translates to or doesn't translate to.